I'm sitting here today across from someone who has had hundreds of conversations about psychology and mental health and all of the things that happen in our brain. Today I have Sana Qadar with me, host of the ABC's All in the Mind podcast. And I am a huge fan of this podcast, so this episode is something I was so excited to do. Now, Sana's not a therapist or a psychologist, she's actually a journalist. But for the last 5 or so years, she's been interviewing some of the best minds in psychology and neuroscience, and I wanted to get her take on all of it, not as an expert necessarily, but as someone who's absorbed almost more mental health content than anyone out there, and who's honest enough to admit when maybe some of it doesn't actually change what you do and how you do it, because at the end of the day, we're all human just trying to figure this out together. There's a lot that we cover in this one, what's actually shifted in how we talk about mental health over the last few years, some of the words and phrases that get lost along the way and become almost so overly used that they become meaningless, and some of the parenting strategies that has actually changed her life overnight. If you've ever felt like you're drowning in mental health content and still somehow think you're not doing anything different, this episode's for you. Here is my conversation with Sana Qadar, host of ABC's All in the Mind podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Today I have with me Sana Qadar from the All in the Mind podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I thought you'd be such a great person to have on the show to talk about what you've been listening to and absorbing, and someone who's not a psychologist or therapist, but very much reporting on and doing research on how we think and the brain and all of these things that come with it. Did it surprise you that you ended up doing this work, this type of journalism?
When I first started out as a 17-year-old in journalism school in Canada, I wanted to be a foreign correspondent and I wanted to be a war reporter, which is a cliche of every little journalism student. But I spent 10 years working in international news, went around the world with that, and then got really depressed by news because it's all bad news. And so I started to think, what else do I want to do? I knew I wanted to do longer form stuff, but psychology, mental health was never on the radar. I started doing a bit of arts, I did a bit of business. This opportunity came to me. I still had to pitch for it, but yeah, they approached me and I thought, hang on, actually that's a fascinating subject area to get to cover. And I love it. I'm really thrilled.
Has it changed anything about yourself? You're researching people or topics and you're pulling things together, you're doing interviews. How has it changed your life or your mind on something?
Definitely made me more aware of a whole lot of issues in the mental health space and what can go wrong and how to encourage well-being. I will say my husband's also a psychiatrist. This wasn't completely foreign territory to me, but yeah, how has it changed me? I'm still scrolling on my phone at hours I shouldn't be, but it's every time I do an interview about social media use, for example, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a reminder. Have a healthier relationship to your phone.
It tells you something, right? If someone who is presenting on this and is a smart, capable person who's educated and doesn't need to be sold on the idea, still struggles to implement some of these things, it makes you human.
Yes, I think I'm definitely human. Yeah.
So if there's any conspiracies out there about an alien race taking over the ABC, it's not true. Something must have landed, especially around relationships or emotional maturity and parenting. I hear you talk about some of those things and you little seeds of self-observation come up.
Yeah, the parenting stuff in particular, I feel like the parenting stuff has been really helpful actually to cover because I have a little one and he's got plenty of big feelings and I haven't always known how to handle them. I still don't always know how to handle them. But talking to the various experts we have, like Dr. Billy Garvey, who's a developmental pediatrician, talking to most recently Dr. Lindsay Gibson, who's a psychologist in the States who wrote a book about emotionally immature parents. She's written a new one about how to raise emotionally mature children and some of the parenting strategies she spoke about, those I've deployed. So yes, to answer your question, yeah, the parenting stuff has definitely landed and helped a lot. But sometimes I'm still like, wait, what? How am I supposed to maintain my composure when I have a deadline and the kid's screaming and you're never supposed to yell? Sometimes it feels like a lot.
It's what's good enough, right? And that's a real challenge to try and figure that out. As someone who digests all that content as well, like I'm a big fan of the All in the Mind podcast and several others, it can feel overwhelming. And the irony is you try to find some of these things to reduce your anxiety, then you get anxious about not doing the things that are supposed to reduce your anxiety or keep you healthier.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you sift through it? How do you, as a journalist and interviewing people, how do you know what bits you're going to take and
As in take into my own life. Whatever hits me with an oof, where I'm like, oh yeah, I should really do that, is what I'll take into my life. Like the yelling advice from Dr. Lindsay Gibson, for example. In her latest book, she talks about how some of her must-do rules, and one of them was to keep yelling to a minimum, which initially I was like, what parent gets through parenting without yelling? What are you talking about? But she talked about how to come up with strategies to avoid getting to the point where you might end up yelling. And so I did that for our morning routine with my little one, and it worked, actually.
it's just ask what lands
Yeah.
for you. What do you take away? And you said those things that just go, oof.
Yeah. So, okay, that's one example. And another one is I can't remember what the episode was, but the person we were speaking to talked about how one of the best exercises you can do for mental health and just in general is actually dance. And I remember thinking, oh, thank God she said dance and not running, because I hate running and I don't do it. And dance sounds like fun. And that little seed has always stayed with me. But I haven't started dancing yet because there's no dance studios nearby. And I between work and the child and life, I'm like, when the heck would I get to the dance studio? But it's on my list of things to do. I'm like, okay, that is something that would be really fun and I'd love to do and I will do one day.
I love that. I've actually just started dancing with my partner and ticks a double box because we feel good after.
Yeah.
You have to brave the discomfort of learning something new as an adult. And if you push through, because you pay for a whole term package, it's like, I have to show up because I've spent the money. And it's such a good connecting thing. Like we're spending time together, fumbling through something, and it's not on a device or just over dinner.
Exactly.
How do you find the balance of what to share about your own personal life without it being other people's stories? Some of your guests have such great nuggets of wisdom. It can be such a pull to be like, I want to share something personal, but it might disclose something that's not my story to tell.
I think a lot about how much of my life to share and how often in the episodes, because I never want to come across too navel-gazy and too self-obsessed and annoying. I think too much would be annoying. People have listened to me, many of them, for years, and so it was a really intimate medium, and so they feel like they have a relationship with me, and so I do want to share some elements of myself because it's also just natural in a conversation to do that. But I am constantly thinking about, okay, in this episode, maybe I cut my little bit out because we've heard enough from me in the last couple of weeks, and I'm often asking the producers on the show, can I get your take? Is it too much, or are you liking this bit of personal reflection? So that's something I'm very mindful of.
I think it's very nice to hear those personal stories because it does highlight how human it is and not just an academic speaking to a topic.
And there's plenty of podcasts where it becomes the host's show and it's all about hosts. And sometimes I find that annoying as a listener too. And I'm like, can you just let your guest do their thing, butt out for a moment? So yeah, I'm constantly striking that balance in my head.
Okay, so we'll make it about you, not me.
No, we can totally make it about you.
It is interesting. They're different audiences. Some people are their brand and it's about them and their life. For other people, what they share really, it's like it punctuates a story.
Yeah, I want to be punctuation. I don't want to be the main thread.
Have you ever taken something home straight away and actioned it? Because I'm sure you pre-record things, but sometimes it can be so tempting to be like, guess what? And like want to just change something in someone or forward them the interview straight away.
Probably the quickest change I made was going back to Lindsay Gibson. I keep saying this one because it literally aired in the last couple of weeks. So she's sticking around in my head for now. But literally the week I interviewed her and she talked about her anti-yelling, I went home and I was like, I need to fix this morning routine because it ain't working. And I started doing something differently right then and there, and it worked right away.
Yeah, I really liked that episode. I think she was calling it the non-negotiables, and it was, say, yelling for emergencies or something
exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
I know that people be like, how am I supposed to, whatever? And there are some things that are inevitable. But when you hear the logic of that it's almost like the boy who cried wolf story. It's like if everything is yelling, it's going to be no difference between put your shoes on, we're running late, or don't you cross the road.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say, I don't think we were quite that bad. It was more the asking a million times and the final time being like, get your shoes on. And I was like, we need to circumvent this entire routine and do something different. And that's what I did.
Is it still working a few weeks later?
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's so
working.
Cool.
We made a game out of the mornings. It's very simple. I just he had a visual list of the tasks he had to do, and he would just never follow them. And so instead I put each task on a piece of paper and cut them up and put them in a basket, and it was like a game where he draws what he does. And I put some funny ones in there, do a silly dance, brush your teeth, put your uniform on, all that kind of stuff. And so he quite likes drawing them out now.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it was desperation that gave birth to that idea.
That's really cool. How long have you been hosting All in the Mind?
I started in February 2020, just before COVID, and I did an 8-month stint then. At the time, I was just filling in for the previous host, Lynn Malcolm, while she was on long service leave. Then I went off on mat leave. She came back. And then she decided she was going to retire while I was on mat leave. And so I came back, I think in like early 2021, and I've been hosting full time since then.
Okay, so we've got 5 years post-lockdown era. What have you noticed changes in the discourse or how we talk about emotions or mental health or psychology? I know you're not a therapist, but you talk to people. You're out in the world. You're with other parents and friends and family. Do you notice things changing?
People are fluent in a lot of the jargon, mental health and psychology speak now. Like definitely they would be more so than 5 years ago because it's only become more ever present on TikTok and social media. So there's that. That's changed. What else has changed? I suppose the biggest change is the language and the fluency.
Have you noticed things being misused? Yeah.
And
Do you have some favorites?
I think the throwing around of trauma online is a little bit troublesome. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist. So I have super strong feelings. I'm more curious about it. I notice it, I watch it, and I think, oh, maybe this is worth interrogating and covering and finding out why. And we have done that previously. We've done episodes about therapy speak and concept creep and stuff like that. So I view it as an outsider being like, that's interesting. Let's analyze that.
The trauma one is definitely one that I struggle with as well.
ADHD stuff as well, like everything being an ADHD symptom, which,
I know people want to belong, and I saw something recently talking about what's the benefit of a diagnosis. And it's nice to know that you're a zebra, not just a strange horse. So if you're a horse who's black and white and you're thinking, hang on, I don't fit in with the other horses. But if someone diagnoses you and say you're a zebra, then you know your people. So I can understand the value of fitting in and understanding.
Yeah.
But I do think sometimes it's a catch-all phrase that people don't recognize what it means. Like for years before I studied this, I didn't know that OCD was a mental illness. You just thought it was being super organized, right? So you would say, I'm just a bit OCD about these things and not think twice about it.
Yeah. So that's been really interesting. And it can become a crutch for some people too when they wield those labels.
How about narcissism?
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's parent.
It's a topic I want to cover still. We haven't done, I don't think, an episode on narcissism specifically. We've touched on it on various different episodes, but I'd still love to do an episode about narcissism and who actually is a narcissist and how do you know and who's just annoying.
How do you get any what we call vicarious trauma? Just hearing some of the stories or some of the examples, especially maybe with that forensic series, does it ever weigh on you? Even you started off wanting to do war correspondent international stuff. Right? And that's a big area for people to have vicarious trauma or to even be there and be traumatized by not just someone's story, but what they witness and see even in the aftermath.
Yeah, not from this show, the stories I've heard on this show, no. I'm trying to think. No vicarious trauma from the stories I've heard on this show. Some stories have stayed with me a lot more and freaked me out a lot more. We did an episode with a woman whose son it was an episode titled Why We Don't Label Kids Psychopaths. And it was about callous unemotional traits and how those emerge in childhood and they don't always necessarily lead to psychopathy. And we spoke to a woman whose son had callous unemotional traits as a child. And from memory, he is diagnosed with psychopathy now as an adult. And his behavior is really extreme. And she was so generous with her story. And I remember her story. She was so honest with her family's experience and it sounded really devastating in many ways. And that really stayed with me because I was like, oh, at that point, my son was, I think, maybe 2 or 3. And I was like, I've been anxious about childhood cancer and him getting hit by a car and all these physical things that could go wrong. I did not think about this as a potential thing that could happen in a family. And so that just seeded in my brain for a while, being like, oh my gosh, how early does it emerge? And toddlerhood is, I think we mentioned in that episode, toddlerhood is the most violent stage for most people because they're completely inhibited. And so while he was a toddler, I was like, is this normal? Is this the beginning of something? It stayed in the back of my mind because I had never spoken to anyone who'd had that experience before. So it was so fresh to me that, it just lingered in my mind for a while.
That is a bit intense, especially when you picture toddlers because I've seen kids play.
Vicious.
They've got dinosaurs and trucks.
Yeah, and they're punching when they're like that tiny and they really haven't learned anything yet.
I'm pretty sure there's a movie, is it The Good Son? Macaulay Culkin and the mum's got
There's also a movie, I haven't seen it, but We Need to Talk About Kevin, I think.
Oh, that sounds about the same.
Anyways, I might be getting it wrong, but I haven't. Yeah. Yes, these are scary things to think about.
So it does educate you and there are things that land for you. Any changes that you've made? I know you said, when you look at the social media stuff, you're like, oh, but I'm still scrolling through my phone. But is there anything, I guess, more that self-awareness bit, there's what we can regurgitate and there's what we take in and do differently. And especially when you're talking about relationships, sometimes when it's not you on the kind of under the microscope, like you're not the one being interviewed, you're just observing, something might land, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I'm that friend who didn't do XYZ, or I didn't blah blah blah. Have you had moments where you're like, okay, I could do something different here, I'm taking the advice and picking up what you're putting down?
In terms of my relationships with others,
Yeah,
we've done stuff about relationships, plenty of stuff about relationships, but I'm thinking romantic relationships as well as friendships, not just parent-child relationships. One thing that's coming to mind that's not about relationships, but again with my own sort of thinking, various episodes we've done on the show have made me much more aware of how my own brain works and my vast capacity for rumination, and how that's not very helpful always, but how active and imaginative and ruminative my mind can be, and how that's something I need to watch.
so all the creative ways you catastrophize something happening.
Yeah, and we've done episodes about how some people don't have visual imagery in their heads. I think it's called, is it aphantasia? No.
Yeah, I remember that episode. That was quite interesting.
And that was the first time I realized that was a thing. And I was like, oh, I have a very vivid internal thinking system. I see stuff, I can sometimes smell stuff, I hear stuff, all of that. So that's been fascinating to hear how other people's minds work and how mine does in relation to them.
Yeah, a bit like you have such a vivid thing. Have you ever seen Scrubs? You know how he would daydream and picture something really weird playing out?
Yes.
I can have those moments where I can picture a whole imaginative thing and be like, oh, okay, but snap back to reality.
Same. Yes, definitely.
One of the things I've noticed, and therapists have this, but I wonder if journalists feel the same, because you're a naturally curious person. Your job has been to pull out stories. Do you find it hard to be in an environment where you have to take up space? You're not the one there to be curious about others. It's your turn to share or to be listened to. Do you find it hard being on the other side of that, either in an interview like this or just day to day?
I was going to say, this is weird for me because I am never the guest. I'm the interviewer, and I haven't done this very much. I find it really weird. Also because I feel like I'm not an expert on this topic. I cover it with intense curiosity as an outsider. And so I feel weird being interviewed this, because I'm like, what do I bring to it? Like, I ask the questions. What do I have to say? So there's that.
You don't have to be an expert. It's a contributor. You've got your finger on the pulse, and the conversations you have are very extensive and have spanned over a few years on a range of topics. That counts for something too.
Yeah, it does.
That's probably an honorary qualification of some kind, because each episode's the length of a lecture.
Yeah.
When you think about it, and if you're reading some of those guests' books and you're engaging with that, don't disregard what value that can bring as a reporter.
Can someone give me an honorary PhD?
Yeah, for sure.
In psychology.
Anyone listening who wants to get behind that, I think that would be really cool.
That'd be fun.
So you resisting the urge to flip the interview back and to start asking questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to respect you're holding court. This is your show. This is your thing.
I don't want to be a narcissist and make it all about me.
Not at all.
Is there anything that you wish you knew before you started learning about the brain? If something you think, I wish I knew that right at 2020 when I took over that mat leave position.
Mainly just wishing I had ever done a course in psychology or neuroscience. It would have been helpful to have done something. Like, I've literally never taken a class on psychology or neuroscience. And so I feel like that would have been helpful. But also, I don't think it harmed me. I've never had any major complaints or factual errors about the show. As journalists, when you are covering a wide range of stuff, you're not a specialist to begin with. You have to get good at, if you're a good journalist, verifying stuff, like knowing how to find sources that are proper and worth their weight and not fluff on the internet. I was able to bring all those skills to it and my outsider curiosity. And so I think it's still made for a good show early on, and that's only gone on from there.
Yeah, that's very cool. Have you ever thought of a career change and moving into that field?
No, I'd be a fucking terrible therapist.
Hey.
It's so weird because I love hearing people's stories, and I love the two-way interaction I get with the audience when they write in. I'm a broadcaster, even though I do podcasts. I don't think I'm mature enough to handle people's individual problems, and I'm responsible for helping them fix it. I can talk to you about it, I can ask you questions, I can turn it into a beautiful story, but I don't know if I got the skills to want to or be good at helping people fix their lives. I also feel like I need help myself. I got issues I got to work out first before I help anyone else.
Fair enough. When people listen to episodes, what are you hoping they'll take away? If you had a kind of a mini purpose or a mission behind the topics you cover, or what are you hoping to leave people with?
I really do want to help people. I really do find it immensely gratifying when people write in about a particular episode and say that really shifted something in their thinking, that helped them understand.
It's different. One's one-on-one, one's larger scale.
Yeah, that is really moving when I hear from people who say something really helped them, or our shows inspire them to go and study psychology. That's always really wonderful to hear as well. I hope people learn about themselves. I hope people have more compassion for others and the experiences they go through. I think what I love about being in this role as opposed to an individual therapist is I feel like I'm a soup of all different people's experiences and giving portions to lots of different people and helping. I feel like I'm a conduit for information. I am, which I find really gratifying. And it's lovely to hear from people from walks of life I would never interact with otherwise if I didn't have this platform. I could be a therapist in my part of Eastern Sydney and I would get a particular clientele. But with this show, I hear from people. Literally, we did an audience survey a year ago, and I have farmers and Sparkies who listen to me, and I have therapists who listen to me, and surgeons. It's just such a wide array of humanity and people from all over the world as well. That's like, how could I not love that? That's amazing to me. So it's a huge privilege, and I love it.
I really love that. That's so nice. That it's a bit of self-help, bit of education. There's something exposure to other people's stories that I think as a listener, you get a lot of value out of hearing, I'm not the only one, or I never thought of it that way.
You're making me think, like, the other reason I think I'd be not so great as a therapist, but I love doing this, is like, I love how immensely creative it is. Like, I do all the fine edits for the show. Our producers will do the, rough edit, and they'll put some music suggestions in. They might do a little bit of sound design, but I do a lot of the sound design and a lot of the music selection. I'm splicing tracks and like looping sections and like holding the beat drop to the moment I want it to punctuate what the person said. Like, I am so in the edit and creating the entire narrative and audio scope of it that I love that. That's an element that's the listenership audience wouldn't really get. That's a lot of fun as well.
Anything that you would like listeners to take away from your experience listening to all of these stories and research?
I suppose the way I'd answer that is how we approach the people we interview, which is look for people who know what they're talking about to some degree. We get a lot of pitches from people who might call themselves coaches or kind of alternative practitioners, and that's fine if that's your jam. We are like my show is housed within the science unit at the ABC. So we need to have a solid science undercurrent for, anything that we're doing. So we're pretty scrupulous about who we will have on the show. That's not to say that we would never speak to someone who's kind of like an influencer in this space, for example. It might be more to like interrogate that whole strand of how mental health is talked about. So we just try to make sure that people have like the actual qualifications to be talking about what they talk about.
Yeah. So being careful about the background of someone giving you advice.
There's just so much online coming from all sorts of people. And sometimes I will look up someone who's a big influencer in the mental health space. And I'll be like, what actually are your qualifications? And then you'll find out sometimes it's solid, sometimes it's a little bit flimsy. And that's not to say that necessarily what they're saying is incorrect either. Like, sometimes they might be pretty good about what they're talking about. It's just, you got to kind of parse through who it is and what it is.
Yeah, I find that particularly difficult because as a registered professional, we're actually have particular guidelines, ethical requirements, and even registration requirements about what we can and can't say, what we can and can't share. And so many things require nuance. And so if someone's like, well, what do you think of this? I'm like, I can't say, it depends.
Yeah.
Like it depends would probably have to be the thing I say the most. And they're like, is this right or wrong? Well, it depends. What's the context?
And to qualify my coach comment, like, we have done an episode about coaching psychology and looked at how like that is not a protected term. So like anyone can call themselves a coach, but coaching is also a legitimate field that people can study, but it's like murky, right? It's totally murky. And so if we do get approached by a coach, for example, like I will look at what their background is. And often like these mindset coaches might just have a background in like business or whatever else. And I'm like, that's fine for a certain kind of show. It's not really going to be fine for us necessarily. And we have spoken to mindset coaches on the show before. I'm trying to think. There was like someone who's a sports psychology coach, although he did have a background in psychology. So basically I'm saying it's not like a hard and fast rule, but it's like they gotta have some scientific something going on.
Yeah. So as a content absorber, be discerning with what information you get from which sources.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I talk a lot about on my podcast is the intersection of mental health and relationships. How do you see relationships either between, you and as a parent, as a partner, as a daughter? Like, how does that fit in with your broader topic, the all in the mind and sitting in the sciences?
Well, I think it was Esther Perel, who we had on the show not too long ago, who says the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships, or some version of that.
Yeah.
And I think kind of relationships probably are at the core of good mental health, really. So everything comes back to relationships. I don't think you can have good mental health without good relationships. So yeah, I suppose the show, in a sense, is really about relationships. Because we talk about that in terms of parenting, we talk about it in terms of annoying colleagues at work, we talk about it in terms of dating and romantic relationships. Like, they're kind of at the core of everything. And even if we're doing an episode about, here's an example, we did an episode about it was about being a carer, specifically I think for someone with dementia. We spoke to this beautiful older man who'd cared for his wife until she died. And I think it was actually more about the neuroscience of dementia, and then he was the kind of personal story in the episode. And on the surface, you could say that's a story about neuroscience and the brain and what goes wrong in the brain during dementia. But it was absolutely a relationship story. His emotional thread of how he cared for his wife and how difficult that was, and all of it absolutely was the heart of that story. So yeah, the show really is about relationships.
Yeah, even as you're saying that, I was getting some goosebumps because that's what people remember. They remember the story.
Mm-hmm. They do. Yeah, you can talk about the various bits of the brain, but until you bring it back into how that impacts a person's behavior and their relationships, it doesn't necessarily connect, especially if you are a listener that isn't. If you are like a truck driver that's listening or someone who's not in the business, you kind of need that.
Yeah. I might wrap it up with one more question. You have such an empathy for other people's stories. Do you flip that same kindness back on yourself, or is your inner critic a little bit harsher?
Ooh. Oh my God, what a question to end on. It depends on the day.
Okay.
I think it actually depends on the day. I think some days I can be more self-compassionate and kind to myself, and other days not so much. I'm trying to be kinder overall, but yeah, still working on that one.
Well, I've been asking people this a lot lately around the self-reflection, but what makes you hard to live with or work with?
Oh my God, husband would have so much to say.
So, we're so good at talking about what other people should do to change. And so I've been trying to get people to think about what makes them really impossible or difficult to live with, work with.
Okay, this is going to be really funny. In terms of live with, my husband's main complaint about me has always been that I'm not very self-reflective and emotionally attuned and don't have a huge vocabulary for my emotions. He used to joke that if he asked me how I was, I'd say good, bad, sad, mad. And that was kind of it. And I was always like, well, that's kind of the gist of it. I don't have a million layers of what's going on, whereas he had a million layers. So I think, according to him anyway, but I think it is true. Sometimes I'm probably not as self-reflective as other people are, which might be strange to hear. I'm also really messy. I'm really messy, and he's a neat freak, so that kind of drives him crazy. And then at work too, my desk is quite messy, and I sit right next to our senior producer James, who's so tidy. Oh my God, it's spotless, his desk. And then mine's just an explosion of books and paper and stuff. So
it's just a different filing system. I'm on your side.
Yeah, exactly. It works for me.
And people can't see it from the camera, but I have Post-it notes and highlighters everywhere.
Amazing.
The self-reflective bit is interesting because the therapist bit in me comes out. When someone says to someone, you're not being self-reflective, they're actually missing a vulnerability bit in themselves. They're not able to say, I feel disconnected because you're not sharing something. So I'd be curious if someone's just saying you're not self-reflective, they're deflecting from a need that they have. So I'd be curious to be like, what's behind that? Is it that you missed a bid for connection? Is it
I think that's it, probably.
Yeah.
Yes, he was wanting to connect at a level that I didn't really realize.
Didn't catch the bid.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe it's time for an episode on couples therapy.
Exactly.
Thanks so much. This has been amazing. And I know you don't think you're an expert, but definitely a huge contributor to the discourse and internationally as well. So go ABC, all in the mind.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I'll put links to where people can find you. And if they have questions that they want to explore on the podcast, where can they reach out to you or find you?
All in the mind at abc.net.au.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
If there's one thing I want you to take away from this conversation is there is a lot of information out there, and sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other, and sometimes there's a little nugget of wisdom or a pearl of wisdom that you think, I'm going to try that. So just like Sana did with her son's behaviour and the fight around the shoes and having to say 1,000,000 times, just put your shoes on. A few small and creative changes helped her stay calm in the moment and make what was a chaotic and stressful morning into a game. That can be so powerful. She changed the structure around it, and so staying calm was actually possible. And there's a difference between willpower and a system, and it shows up in more ways than we can imagine. It's the kinds of conversations I have on my podcast, and we talk about all these things that we can control and we can do different. I really hope that you enjoyed this interview with Sana Qadar, someone who has a lot of exposure to conversations around mental health and psychology and all the things that happen in our brain. And I really recommend her podcast. It's a really great listen. Thanks for listening today. And if this one resonated with you, send it to someone who needs to hear it. I'll catch you next week.